Good to be with you. The children may be dismissed at this time for Children's Church. Many of you have already noticed that there are not outlines up on the bistro tables. There are, however, slides. This is simply because it's a very simple outline. You could just jot the points down as we go along. But I also ran out of time, so I didn't have that was probably the bigger reason why. But we're going to just do without him today. We are going to take a break from Mark chapter 13 this week. I've put out an awful lot of information over the past 3 weeks, as you know, and I wanted to just give a little bit more time for all of you to digest. And we will pick up next week, and we'll begin stepping through Mark 13 verse by verse again, and we will fulfill the promise that I made earlier to move through the chapter now that the preliminaries are done. But this morning I want to keep things a little bit lighter by talking about a virtue that's been on my mind a lot lately, and it is the virtue of personal integrity. Integrity can be defined as, and I'm going to define it this way. I'm just going to put this out there now. I'm defining integrity this way. I'm sure there are better definitions, and maybe I'll refine this definition over time. But I would define integrity as consistency between one's words and one's actions. Again, I would define integrity as consistency between a person's words and between their actions. And this would be directly opposed to hypocrisy, where someone says something and they do something totally different. Do you follow me? Integrity is where your actions and your words match, and hypocrisy is where what you say is different from what you do. Okay? Jesus himself challenged us to live with integrity in the Sermon on the Mount. And this is Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 36. If you're fast and you want to turn there, that's fine, but I am going to put the verses up on the board for you this morning. Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 36. Again, you have heard that the ancients were told, "You shall not make false vows, but shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you, make no oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Nor shall you make an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything else beyond these is of evil." And so what Jesus is challenging us to do here is to live in a way where oaths are unnecessary. If you look back there, he says, don't make any oath at all. Don't even bother with them. He's saying live in a way where oaths are unnecessary. Oaths exist. This is his argument. Oaths exist to prop up the word of those who lack integrity. Do you follow me? What's the point of an oath? What's the point of swearing? It's to prop up the word of those people who do not have integrity. Why do you say, I swear? I swear in a stack of Bibles. I swear in my mother's grave. You do this because your word isn't good enough on its own. You got to have something else to prop it up. That's what he's saying here. And Jesus' point here is if you always live consistent with your word, then you don't need an oath. Your word stands on its own. Your yes is yes. Your no is no. And that's that. And so his point here is that followers of Jesus do not need oaths. They do not need to swear because they live with integrity. And their word is accepted as it is. Does that make sense? That's the point that he's making here. Personal integrity is a very powerful thing. And it reminds me, when I think of integrity, I think of my dad. My dad is definitely a man of integrity. I've never seen my father lie. I've never seen him try to get away with something when no one was looking, that kind of thing. And he lived this out in a way that modeled it for me and challenged me, but he did teach me something. He did tell me a story one time when I was young, that the purpose behind his story was to challenge me to live with integrity. And what he told me one time is that when he was young, when he was, early in his adult years, just entering the workforce, one of his coworkers, where he was working, accused another of threatening them, and it had to do with wearing an earring. I think this is back in the 70s, and so a guy showed up to work with an earring in his ear, and back then that kind of, people kind of reacted to that different than they do now. And the person who wore the earring claimed that someone threatened him physically, all right? And so HR got involved, and everyone was being called in one by one and being questioned. And everyone in the department, as they were being questioned, was saying, no, none of that ever happened, didn't happen at all, isn't true, it's all nonsense. Everybody, one after another, was going through and covering for this guy. My dad was troubled because he was in line to go in too, because he knew that that wasn't true. He knew something did happen, and he was troubled because he knew if he spoke up and said something, then he would be diming out a coworker, and there would be all kinds of implications with that. But he said, I can't lie, I can't do that, I have to tell the truth. And so he told them the truth when they asked him. And this is what he told them, this was the truth. Yes, the employee in question made fun of the other guy. He was wearing an earring and he made fun of him pretty bad. It was out of line what he was doing. But he never threatened him. He never said anything physically harmful. I was right there, I heard everything. He never said anything to threaten him. He was just making fun of him. It wasn't right, but it wasn't a threat. And after that, the investigation stopped immediately. They didn't ask one more person anything. They immediately concluded the investigation. They took the employee and that made fun of the other guy, and they wrote him up, but they didn't fire him, and they moved on. And they did this. At the time, they said, Floyd doesn't lie. He tells the truth. He never lies. And that was the end of it. As soon as my dad spoke up, that was the end of it. And also, along with the fact that he never lies, he was the only one that walked in there with the courage to tell the truth and to say what actually happened, even though it was a bit uncomfortable to do. And that brought all of it to conclusion just like that. And I share this because there's something going on in front of us right now that reminds me of what happened to my dad, okay? It's national news. It's interesting. Bear with me as I touch on some current events. I promise you that there is a point that has to do with integrity here that I want to make. But as I go through, just bear with me, okay? On August 8th of last year, the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago, right? This is President Trump's house. And they discovered that he had many classified documents in his possession. He said he didn't have them. The FBI executed a search warrant and found them. And I believe right now the count is 184 classified documents, if I'm not mistaken. And this led to all kinds of legal problems for President Trump and questions on what the Department of Justice would do. Are they going to prosecute him? And if they do prosecute him, what about Hillary? Because she wasn't prosecuted. All that kind of stuff is going on. There's outrage. There's all kinds of weird feelings going on in the air. And that's been going on and on and on for months and months and months. And then all of a sudden, in November, something happened that really changed the dialogue. And that was that President Biden was also found to have classified documents in his possession. That kind of thing. And apparently, when he was clearing out an old office, or his staff was clearing out an old office or somebody that he used when he was vice president, a small number of documents were found locked away in a strange locker. It was like a storage locker of some kind. And when they were found, they were handed over to the National Archives, but as a result, a search was then conducted on his home in Wilmington, Delaware, and when they searched his home, guess what? They found more documents, and this made the problem even bigger because now President Biden is guilty of the exact same thing that President Trump is guilty of, and so more questions, more outrage, and was this the same offense as President Trump, and was President Biden negligent, and how do we proceed with both? And so this has been going on in front of our eyes over and over again. And then, just last week, something else happened, which I would argue changed the whole tone of the whole tone of the conversation. You know what I'm talking about? Guess who else was found with classified documents in his home? Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence. And it broke national news, and within a few days, Vice President Pence himself spoke up and explained. He said, after seeing the classified documents pop up from when Biden was vice president, I decided to conduct my own preemptive search out of an abundance of caution. And sure enough, I found 2 boxes marked classified. They were in my home. I turned them over immediately to the National Archives. And he explained at that time that they were inadvertently shipped there by mistake when they were clearing out of the White House. He didn't even know they were there. And the only reason he found them is because he initiated the search himself. He had no idea they were even there. And he explained at the time, he said, this isn't an excuse. I shouldn't have had these things. I didn't know they were there, but that's not an excuse. I take full responsibility for this. I'm sorry. I will cooperate with everything else. That's the way this went down. Now, have you noticed a bit of a difference in the way that they responded to Vice President Pence as opposed to Biden and Trump? Do you guys see a difference? Is it just me, or did they by and large seem to totally believe him? Boom. We're good with that. It seems like everybody seems to totally believe him. No one's freaking out at all. Why do you think that is? What does Pence have in abundance above the other two? I got to be careful what I say here. What does Pence have in abundance of? Integrity. Isn't it interesting that his integrity has made a huge difference in this whole thing? I would argue that Vice President Pence exudes integrity. It's deep down in the marrow of his bones. I think all of us that see him sense it. And even though we sense it there have also been staffers and workers that worked alongside him that are coming forward in the midst of all this that are saying, look, I'm telling you, this guy is the most serious guy I've ever worked with in my entire life. He's the most by-the-book guy we've ever seen. There is absolutely no way that he did this willfully, and he is not careless with anything that he does. I mean, people are coming out over and over again and saying this over and over again. And so, through his personal integrity and through his transparency, Pence just showed the nation how a slip-up with classified documents can actually happen. And I'm not saying that it fixes the problem, but what it's doing is changing the tone of the argument, and it's setting a blueprint in place for how to go about fixing it. It's reverberating back, and now they're able to go back over and say, okay, I see how this could possibly happen. How can we work to resolve the issue? And it's just clearing the head up. It reminds me of the way my dad explained to me about how everyone was confused, then my dad walked in the room and told him what happened, and the argument was done. You know what I mean? It's kind of having the same tone. It just reverberated. And so Pence's integrity is bringing order to a real mess right now. Again, it's a bigger mess, and it's going to take longer to fix. But it really is helping to bring some order to something that's been going on for a long time. And in the same way, we can really be a force for good as Christians if we cultivate personal integrity in our own lives as Jesus commanded. Do you follow me? If we have that same level of integrity, we can speak into complicated and messy situations, and we can help kind of calm things down and set things right simply by having integrity. Just having it be part of our character so that our words line up with what we do. So the question is, how do we cultivate personal integrity? How do we do it? I'm going to give you 5 ways this morning. And as I often say, these are probably not the only 5 ways that are out there. Also, there's going to be always and nevers in these points, okay? And the idea here is to give you the positive and negative side of it, and also to communicate that these are lifestyles. As I'm putting these out there, I'm not telling you something that you can just do a little bit more of or do once in a while. It doesn't work that way. These things that I'm putting up, you have to embody. You have to live out day and night. They have to become part of who you are, and you have to live them when people see and when you're alone. It has to become part of who you are for this to work, okay? These are some ways to cultivate personal integrity in our lives and to be those people that God has called us to be. Firstly, always tell the truth, never lie. Always tell the truth, never lie. Probably the most obvious of them. There are others. If you have integrity, people will never question whether what you're saying is true. If you build truthfulness into your character and you practice it daily, when you speak and say, this is what happened, they're going to say, yep, that's the end of it. He wouldn't lie. Don't need to hear anyone else. That's the kind of people God has called us to be. This is why Vice President Pence was so easily believed in the midst of all this craziness, because the man has integrity. The man speaks up and says what's true. And you know why you can tell that someone has integrity and they're truthful? Because they speak up and tell the truth even when it hurts them. Have you ever had to tell the truth when you knew when you told the truth you were going to be paying a price for it? It was going to hurt you. People with integrity speak the truth even when it's harmful and hurtful to them, because that's just the right thing to do. If you have a habit of doing that and speaking that way, people will recognize that you're a person of integrity, and they will trust your word. You will not need to swear on a stack of Bibles. You will not need to swear on your mother's grave. You will not need to do any of those things. Your yes will be yes, and your no will be no. Those are the kind of things that's the characteristic that God has called us to live by. Does that make sense? Always tell the truth. Always tell the truth. Don't lie. Secondly, where'd point 2 go? Okay, what? That's funny. Man, I've been having a rough time with slides lately. So just listen to my words, don't look at the slide. It was in there. It was in there. Did I really forget to put it in there? Okay, so here's the second one. Yeah, that's right. I always tell the truth, that's for sure. So the second point, okay? Always keep your word. Never break your commitments. Always, always, always keep your word. Never break your commitments. And I'll say it again because it's not up on the board. Always keep your word, never break your commitments. Be where you say you're going to be, and do what you say you're going to do. Always. People should never wonder whether you're going to show up or whether you're going to be somewhere that you said you're going to be. They should always feel like if you say you have something covered, we're good, because that person won't let us down. No matter what, you have it. Excuses like, oops, I forgot. Oops, I got distracted. Innocent things happen, right? Have you ever been asked to do something and say, yeah, I'll be there, and oops, I forgot? Yeah, it happens to us. We slip. But that actually undermines your integrity. You know, when you're counting on someone, they say they forgot, you're still left hanging, right? And so you can't just expect that to be okay. When you forget, when you slip up, you should take that seriously, and you should do whatever you need to do on your end to make sure that you don't do that, forget again, or whatever it is. That's what it means to have integrity. As you guys know, I talk about this all the time, but I work at Wegmans, and one of the things that I do there, in fact, I'm going to be doing it tonight, is I'm going to be a store coordinator, and so I'm actually assisting run the whole store, and I'm checking in on all of the departments are there. And one of the first things that I'll do when I'll get there is I'll walk through and I'll find out who's scheduled, who's in charge, what's going on, what are some of the problems that might be showing up in each department before the evening even starts there. And one of the things that always happens as part of that is I see who's in charge of that department for the evening. And you probably know something of this in your own experience. There are times that I see names there and I say, this is going to be an easy night for this department because that person's there and they have this thing covered. There are other times that I see other names there and I'm like, uh-oh, might need to check in here a little bit because you know. The point here is that part of having integrity is being that person that when they see your name, they say, they've got it. Does that make sense? It's part of having integrity. It didn't make it up on the board, but I swear. No, it was there. Point 3, this is up on the board. Always take responsibility for your failures. Never brag about your successes. Always take responsibility for your failures. Never brag about your successes. What does that mean? Admit it when you fail. And never pass the buck, even when others are involved. Take some responsibility for your actions and for your part. And again, we're going to go back and use the illustration of Vice President Pence here. But note that as he's coming out and he's talking about having these classified documents, he's taking personal responsibility, even though it's almost certain that one of his subordinates slapped a sticker on there to send it home when they should have sent it somewhere else. He's not diming out that person. He's not saying this person messed up and now I'm paying the price. He's saying, I'm in charge of this. It's on me. I take responsibility. That's what people of integrity do. They take responsibility for the people under them. They shield them. They protect them. They have enough integrity and enough character to be able to absorb those kind of things. That's what they do. And speaking of passing on things, people with integrity don't pass on the blame when they fail. But people with integrity do pass on the credit when they succeed. Follow me? When you fail, they shield them and they say, this is my responsibility. They absorb that. But when they succeed, they say, you know what? Why I succeeded? Because of all of you. And they pass it right on. I couldn't have done this if it hadn't have been for all of you and you and you. They pass it right on. And I went, as I was prepping and thinking over this week, I did watch an interview because I picked up his book, So Help Me God, and read through it, and I watched an interview as well. And I noticed at one point when they brought up January 6th, they had mentioned how the part that he played in making sure that the government fulfilled its role that day. And he said, I was honored to play a small part in that. And I remember listening to that going, played a small part? What are you talking about? Man, you kind of saved the day, didn't you? But he would not have any of that. He kept passing it on and saying the Capitol Police did their job and the other congressmen and senators did their job, that kind of thing. And he's not wrong, they did, but he was so quick to pass on credit and diminish his role and to lift up others. People with integrity do that. That's the way that it works. When you come across people that brag and hog the credit for themselves, those are people who do not have integrity. You should watch out for that. People who brag and are constantly building themselves up, they don't have integrity. Watch out. Fourthly, always treat everyone equally. Never favor one above another. Always treat everyone equally. Never favor one above another. You notice that in the Bible it speaks of being no respecter of persons. That's what it's talking about here. It's talking about treating everyone equally. What do we mean by that? We mean don't schmooze with the brass when they're walking by. Don't you hate that? It's just not something that people with integrity do. People with integrity are genuinely delighted and honored to meet everybody in their lives, and they feel like all of them equally are an honor. I think of Mr. Rogers, that movie. Was it Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Tom Hanks? He did just such a wonderful job illustrating him. But this man, Mr. Rogers, was genuinely excited to see everybody that walked in front of them, and that he treated them as though they were esteemed and special people. There was no difference in the way he treated anyone. He saw them all that way. We say that everyone's equal, don't we? We say that everyone's equal, but do we live in a way that communicates that, or do we schmooze up to the brass whenever they walk by and ignore people that don't benefit us? Does that make sense? People with integrity treat everyone equally. They don't schmooze up to the brass. Again, thinking about Wegmans, we had a corporate walk recently. I'm working in seafood now, and they had a corporate walk where the bigwigs from seafood came and they were inspecting, and you could see the people that were running up to go walk around with him and hi, I'm so and so, and they were just all trying to get, leaving their post and just following them around and kind of shamelessly. I was like, ugh. You ever see that? You're just like, ugh. Whenever, and I'll be honest, I used to do that a lot, but it's over the years I've come to see just how vain that is, and so when they showed up, I actually went somewhere where they couldn't see me and started cleaning something. It's just the way I deal with stuff like that anymore. But if we believe that everyone is equal, we should live like it. And we should, I'm not saying ignore the people that are in authority, speak and be respectful to them, but don't suck up to them. Also treat everyone equally, like they're all honored and distinguished, because they are in God's eyes. Lastly, always apply yourself. Always apply yourself. Never give anything less than your best. Always apply yourself. Never give anything less than your best. What do we mean by this? We mean that if God has you in the most prominent role in a place, do that role well. Today I'm speaking, and it's a more prominent role, and I'm trying to do my best at it. I'm trying to apply myself, even though I missed a slide. However, there are other days where God has me washing dishes. And on those days where God has me washing dishes somewhere where no one can see, I try to be the best dishwasher I can possibly be. And I try to honor God as much in that as I do anything else. I think we all say, just as all people are equal, we say that all jobs are equal and everything's important, right? We say that, don't we? But do we live like that? Do we apply ourselves to the more mundane tasks with the same rigor that we do the prominent ones? Do we live like we say we believe? I was in Training Ground yesterday. Training Ground is a district conference. It's a district kind of a training conference that they put on every year. I'm on the committee planning it now. I'm going to be there for the next few years. But there are prominent roles that people play in that whole process. Some of them are up on the platform speaking. Some of them are emceeing and doing various things out in the public where everyone can see, and they have their little name tags on saying, I'm so-and-so, and I'm important. And I get all that. There's a need for that. But I was given a different job on this day. I was given a special job. My job was to go back in the sound room, and the sound room at this church is not like ours where you can see them. My sound booth area was behind a closed door where no one even knew that I was there. And you know what my job was? My job was to be the slide advancer. My fingers are still tired from pushing that button, you know. But and it was totally fine. I was totally fine with it, by the way. But I can honestly tell you that my goal was to be the best slide advancer that they'd ever had. And I had 5 different messages I had to go through, and I read the manuscripts, and I actually marked in spots. I tried to make sure I knew exactly what they were saying so that I could make sure that slide moved when they needed it to move. I know what it's like to have that not happen, and I wanted to make sure I had the back of the people who were speaking. And it was an honor. But it's not something anyone saw. It was something that it was behind the scenes and no one even knew that I was there. But that's okay. All those jobs are important, and we need to apply ourselves to those with just as much rigor as we do to the things that everyone sees. And people with integrity do that. Does that make sense? We put our heart and soul into everything. We always give it our best, no matter what. That's what integrity means. Does all this make sense? Good. In conclusion, then, integrity is cultivated through daily lifestyle. And I think, is Janice here? Oh yeah, we got her up here today. So I was like, oh, we better run and get Janice. Integrity is cultivated through daily lifestyle. It's not, again, something like one day I'll decide that I'm going to apply myself a little bit more than another day. You have to do this all the time. This has to be part of who you are. It has to be part of your being. It has to get right down to the marrow of your bones and just be a part of your character. And it is those little things that over time, over a lifetime, can cause you to have a big influence in the long run. You know, like for instance, Mike Pence, he spoke, and his word made a big difference in this particularly difficult situation. But the reason that he has integrity is because of all the little day-to-day decisions he's done over the course of his life where he hasn't compromised and he's done the right thing even when it hurts. And as Christians, that's what God has called us to do, is to live that way, to do the right thing day by day and even moment by moment. And so I would encourage you to seek integrity, to be people where your yes is yes and your no is no. But also, as I encourage you to seek integrity, beware of something. Beware of this world, because there are people and institutions in this world that would seek to use your integrity to cover their sins and to lend credibility to them that they do not have. Do you follow me? We do it in our own way with God when we use his name in vain. That's why the third commandment is, do not use the Lord's name in vain. Whenever we say, I swear to God, or I swear on a stack of Bibles, do you realize what we're doing? We're trying to use God's name to prop up our own lack of credibility, and we're kind of dragging him down in the process. That's why it's such a grievous sin. That's why you should never, never, never do it. But even in this world, there are people who lack integrity, and there are organizations operating for profit and nothing else in this world that lack credibility, and they will look for ways to partner with Christians and with the church in order to give them credibility that they don't have to bring up their success. And whenever we slip into partnering in any way with that, we erode our own integrity and we hurt ourselves. And so we are warned oftentimes in the Bible not to enter into partnerships with this world, to remain free from that. And the reason we're called to do that is because our integrity is so important to our mission. Does that make sense? So as you seek integrity, protect your integrity by not getting entangled in this world. By love, you need to love this world and you need to minister to this world, but don't partner with it. Because when you do, you erode your integrity. And with all that said, let's be people of integrity, and will you pray with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve you. We thank you for the example that you set by sending Jesus to this earth to do everything before our eyes that we've been called to do. We truly are serving a Lord and Savior who has walked every step that we've walked with perfect integrity and has never asked us to do anything that he hasn't done himself. And so we thank you so much for that. Help us to model that in our own lives and our own ministries. Help us to be people of integrity. Help us to be people where our yes is yes and our no is no. And then when we speak, they say, that's got to be it, because they would never lie. Father, help us to be those people. And it's hard, but we believe with your help, we can make day-to-day decisions that will help us step forward in that direction. We thank you for the privilege and the opportunity and the help through your Spirit. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.